right, welcome to another episode of the Critical Introverts podcast. I'm your host, Senor Filth. I have regulars Trevor Brown and Nate Kapnicky, and we have a new guest today. He goes by the name of A.K. Spencer. If you want to introduce yourself.
I'm A.K. Spencer.
Okay.
How much of an introduction do you want?
I don't know if you wanted to just say who you were or whatever.
I'm an artist and writer and entrepreneur that lives in Portland, Oregon. Former leftist, kind of red-pilled. I'm sure we'll get into all that.
Yeah. I guess let's just go into your red pilling kind of thing. I guess first, what made you, delve into just becoming an anarcho-communist? Like, what was the process?
Well, it was actually, so I grew up in a small town, Yakima, Washington, and I came out right at the end of high school, and it was a very, very different back then. So like when I came out, there was nothing, like it's 1991, right before I graduated. There's no gay groups. In fact, they would only let a friend did a report on gay kids basically, and she wanted me to come and talk, and they wouldn't let me be on the campus until after class, and all the kids could come out and ask me. This is right after I graduated, but so that set me up immediately to have a strong sense of when people are fucked over. I didn't like people being experiencing oppression. I had been self-loathing, and all of that typical closeted gay kid stuff. So I moved to the big city. I'm kind of primed for that, and I was actually kind of more of a sensitive new age boy, actually. But right. Somewhere along the line, I stumbled on a book. It was originally an essay by Peter Kropotkin, who was one of the fathers of anarchism, was appropriately titled Anarcho-Communism. So I read that, and it was, kind of like it all clicked. It combined my absolute love of freedom, anarchy, with a sense of what we would now call social justice. So it started there, and then I just moved slowly. This happens with leftists so often. They start as idealists that love the world, and when they realize the world doesn't want their ideal, they get more and more bitter. So within a few years, I'm like, smash everything, hang the cops, like that kind of shit. But yeah, that was basically how I became an anarcho-communist. And I should say that I was like a kind of a theoretical punk kid. I was never I was an armchair anarcho-communist. I liked theory, but I didn't really smash shit or anything like that. I was never actually into that.
How do those like trains of thought kind of go with each other? Because when I think anarchism, I think total freedom, blah blah. But when I think communism, I kind of think the opposite, much more communal, stay in your lane kind of thing. So where does the blending come in?
You're making me flashback.
Lies. That's how those things come together. It's lies.
You're going to make me go back to like when I was an apologist for anarcho-communism. Anarcho-communism is a far cry better than any other form of leftism. It's just never practiced. And now most of the kids have no idea what it is. But originally, the first international in the 19th century, we associate with Marx. The majority of European communists were anarcho-communists, which is a libertarian socialist. So Bakunin, who is the father of anarchism or anarcho-communism in Europe, what he said to Marx, he said, the ideal for both Marx and the anarchists was that you eventually have a communist utopia. Marx said that you seize the state to do that, and you have the dictatorship of the proletariat. Bakunin, all the way back in like 1830s, 40s, said if you do that, Marx, you'll have a ruling class, and you'll have a new kind of tyranny. So the anarcho-communists were always right. They were right that would happen. And then, in fact, in the Russian Revolution, Ukraine was somewhere between anarcho-communist for a while, and they were stabbed in the back by the Bolsheviks. But so the problem with anarcho-communism isn't it privileges liberty It does. It's just idealistic and says that eventually, if we maximize liberty, uh, we'll have some kind of communism. So its real problem is that it's naive. It's not. It doesn't have within it at least as much of a mechanism to become genocidal like Marxist communism. And the only other thing I say about that is that anarchism evolved in two strains. This is the European one, was almost all anarcho-communist. So when you see the Antifa dipshits flying the red and black flag, that was the anarcho-communist or anarcho-syndicalist. It's the same thing, basically, flag, and that flew in Spain. But they also fly Stalinist shit, which makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, the European strain was
makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, it does, because they're fucking idiots. In America, you had a much more individualist, like the kind of anarchism that most people think of. It's
I think like the punk rock kind of anarchist kind of thing. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, that was kind of more like punk rock. It's not even really political. Really. It's just more a chaos thing. But in America, you had the kind of anarchism that was very individualistic, and actually anarcho-capitalism kind of evolved from that. And it privileged property, and it, I think more correctly. And then you have a similar problem with ANCAPs, is that, in my opinion, they as soon as I red pilled, I'm like, anarchism. Let's finally read the ANCAP shit. I'm like, it's just another form of idealism, but it's not bad. It just won't ever work. But anyway, that's that.
I'd love to order my McNukes with my McCyanide and my and my Mc slaves and my
McDonald's
clone factory. You know,
Yeah.
no. It just becomes Mick, and it's order whatever you want, because it's private. Like private companies can do whatever they want, which includes owning the entirety of the market share, because you can't be forceful and interfere with anything.
Yeah, every single row, every inch of land is owned. It's just not practical, but at least they've never, I've never seen ANCAPs going out there and smashing the shit out of my city, for example. So I'm like, you're cool. You're never gonna hurt me. You're never. They're not nihilists. They're not nihilists. That's for sure.
I've never heard of Seamus Coughlin or anyone in the Mises Caucus or any libertarian like anyone in the Libertarian Party. I've never heard them chant Black Power and violently pillage working class communities. I've never heard that from them, very mysteriously.
Yeah.
What do you consider your direction now? What would you call yourself?
Well, it's funny because I consider myself a moderate, precisely because after I realized that I had been fundamentally wrong, my red pill process, it was like, oh shit, I have been wrong. There was multiple layers of the red pill process, but what I'm talking about there is just my view of capitalism. The data proved me wrong, and I'm like, oh shit. I like I said, I kind of wanted let's just become like an anarcho-capitalist. I don't know. It's all I knew how to work with. And I still love liberty, but what I realized is that I can't let myself fall into another ridiculous idealism. So I'm a moderate, but what that means to me now is that I voted for Trump, and I never thought I would do that, but I voted for Trump. I guess I'm technically for now registered a Republican. I think there's a historical pendulum that's swinging, but one of the things that made me do that was the shocking realization of when I'm kind of going through this red pill process of like, wait, the only guys that are having conversations and debates of both sides are all on these kind of Republican-y platforms, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? Yeah. This is what the Democrats used to do. The Democrats used to invite both sides, and so I'm like, wherever free speech, and they're defending free speech. I'm like, what? Yeah. Did I wake up in an alternate timeline or something? But I go where free speech is. That's a major thing for me is free speech. But
same here. Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me was just purely just the free speech angle. I don't really care much about that much else. I mean, I kind of do, but free speech is the thing that I am kind of pretty diehard about because ultimately, there's an importance of just hearing ideas and finding out maybe the possibility that you could be wrong on something. And yeah, when I see that being drowned out on the left, that's when I was like, all right, if that's what you guys consider right wing now to be free speech, then I guess call me fucking Ronald Reagan now. I don't give a shit. It's
No, it's what's happened was republicanism is a liberal philosophy, constitutional republicanism, which is the Republican Party.
Mhm.
That is a liberal philosophy for the most part. It's straight out of the Enlightenment. And so what happened was the Democrat Party just went post-Marx socialism, as I've talked about on your show a billion times over.
Mhm.
And so they went over there. So like if the Republican Party like went this way and the Democrat Party went this way, then if you're like right here, if my frame wasn't in 9:16, like this illustration I'm currently doing would make a lot more sense. But it's because you've basically stayed right here.
Yeah.
The Republican Party have gone like a little bit over here, and the left have gone completely out of frame.
Yeah.
That's why you seem right wing, even though you've basically been the same person. Like, AK, you've basically been the same person. You have the same philosophical and moral leanings. You just got pwned by reality and did what everyone else does when they get pwned by reality, which is abandon ideology, which is what you should do. It's what I did. It's giving this great.
There's a truth to that, but I was not ideology bound.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. As an anarcho-communist, like I was still pragmatic. I often voted Democrat. I was kind of anarcho-communist that could criticize Marx, but I was also a big Fidel Castro fan. It's not if I had been constrained by the ideology, I don't think that I would have, after a quarter of a century, been able to surrender. In fact, I believe that my traditional left, that kind of traditional leftist ideology, is precisely what, and I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to defend the left, but, I mean, apologies for the left, but it's just a fact, is that one of the things that actually opened my eyes was that the left, the reality of the left, or whatever that fucking means anymore, had so radically changed. And I had been equipped by certain aspects of the left to look at what was happening. So, for example, I'm watching Trump talk talk fake news. And then I'm like, all of the leftists suddenly, hey, trust the media. I'm like, what? Noam Chomsky, manufacture of consent. That's like, we've always said it's fake news.
Yeah.
Like overnight, the left forgot everything that it believed. So actually, in a way, it was a being kind of a disabusing myself of naivety. There's no doubt about that. But I think that there's it's a little bit more than that, because it's not like this kind of left is a natural. I know that there's a lot of people on the right, including a couple close friends, who really believe that what's happening now is almost like an inevitable natural culmination of either leftism or liberalism. And I don't see that. I would be happy for, I don't think I'd ever go back to being a Democrat or anything like that, but I'd be happy if we had those just like viable debates about economics and so on. But yeah, there's a truth there. But my red pilling wouldn't have happened possibly had it not been that there had been a radical change in the definition of left. The left threw away all of its, almost every single value it held sacred. Mm-hmm. And when they did that, it did open me up to see that some of the other stuff was bullshit. Like, capitalism's actually pretty great. It has its flaws, but it's pretty great. But yeah.
How did you take? So I think a lot of people on the left, I think they're just afraid of the idea that like they could be wrong on something. So it's like maybe like a house of cards thing. Like everything kind of shatters. Was it like, how was it for you? Like, if you figured out like something was bullshit, did you get like a wave of anxiety that's, oh, my world's crashing down, or you just didn't really care that much ideologically?
I cared. I wouldn't say anxiety. It was hard because it was more of I went through similar things before. So I had been, as a gay kid, I'd been baptized in the Mormon church, literally thinking when I came out of the water, I'd be straight. And I found out Mormonism, who I love my Mormons, but I don't agree with their history. So I was wrong about that. I had been wrong about enough stuff that I thought was true that, I even, like, when I briefly tried to mainstream and leave the anarcho-communism, like, Obama, the Democrats. I'm like, it didn't take long to realize that's bullshit. And I kind of shifted back. I'd been wrong enough. It was hard. The most difficult thing about it was, and it still is, it's a sense of, fuck, I wasted a lot of time. It rolls into personal development stuff.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, okay, if I would have went in just a slightly different bookshop, and instead of Anarcho-Communism, which is a good essay, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'd be like, fuck, man, because it's like I'm working on being an entrepreneur now, and I'm still like struggling, but man, I'd be so far ahead. But also investing my sense of self for so long into something, and I was just like, it was built on a foundation of sand, a lot of it, most of it. So it was hard, but it was also exciting. It was kind of exciting. I didn't expect that.
That's the thing I try to tell people. Like, it's exciting to figure out where you're wrong, because you can only get better. But I try, and people just get worked up and they just want to walk away from the conversation, which is odd to me.
Do you tell this to people who read books or work out?
No.
Exactly. Like, people who don't like to challenge themselves, especially don't like being told they should challenge themselves.
Yeah.
That's just there's like, I hate to be like very like rigid about this, me of all people, but essentially there it really is two kinds of people. And look, I'm in my 20s. I'm probably a kid. I don't know shit. All of you guys are older than me. But essentially, I would say that there are two types of people. There are the kinds of people that do things, that like to do things. I mowed the alley and the back lawn, and then I came in here. My nose is stuffy as hell, if you can't tell. I just changed my shirt and showed up on here.
Yeah.
Because I like to do shit and be active. Right?
Yeah.
Before I came home and mowed the lawn, I just walked 6 blocks to get to the gym, worked out, and then walked 6 blocks back. Right? That's because I like to challenge myself, and go figure. If I do that, I also read. I also have my business, which I refuse to plug in the middle of your show because I'm not a dirtbag. But like, I had to leave half my friends because they were all like that. They didn't like to challenge themselves. They didn't like to do things or work on themselves. They just wanted to do what the television said was good, and watch all the television shows that everyone else does, and play the latest video game. I'm not going to tell them, hey, like I said to my friend the other day, you can go on Google and type file type : PDF and any book you want, and you can get any book you want right now for free. Right? And then he's like, oh, that's cool. He went right back to playing video games. Do you want to download something for later? He's like, no, I'm good. Are you going to remember what I told you? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have a very tough time challenging themselves. And one of the things I wanted to say is the 3 hardest words for anyone to really challenge themselves is to see if they can admit that I was wrong.
True.
Or I am retarded.
Yes.
I guess Spencer, I guess back to you. I mean, were you ever into? I guess, did you see like the development of like Antifa becoming bigger and bigger in Portland within your circles?
Not my circles. By then, I had just become a depressed drunk who read communist and anarchist stuff at the bar and couldn't pay my rent but could always buy beer. But by the time that they really took off, but I saw it I saw what happened here during 2020, and it was enraging, gutting. It was scary, actually. I'm like so many others, everything seemed like we were in a different world all of a sudden. But I think my first inkling of a change was I noticed when free speech specifically would start to come up, and over like a number of years, I noticed not necessarily Antifa type people. I only knew one guy. When the subject would come up, I noticed more people that I would consider just normal liberals, like Portlanders, validate the idea of hate speech and restriction. I'm like, hate speech isn't a thing. You can't restrict any speech. And it got a little bit more. And then I remember a night when I was talking with that Antifa kid, and I was using kind of this line that I had used for years, one of my little but it was true. Because I'd argued with actual Nazis, like when there was real neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
I said, if a group of neo-Nazis walked down the street, I would be like, yes, good, because you want them to expose their stupidity. You want them to speak. That's how we win. And this Antifa, he had this look of utter befuddlement. Like, no, you don't allow it. You don't allow the bad guys to speak.
Yeah. And
I think that was a big one for me. But then soon after that,
around what time, I guess, year was this roughly?
This would have been before it got really bad. So it would have, I'm thinking 2000, I'm blurry, 17-ish, right around there, before things got bad. Because, and then it was like in I don't know, right around 2019, before things really got bad. And the first time I started hearing about, I guess it would have been around then too, when they started shutting down, like Ben Shapiro, they calling them Nazis, and it was tumblers were starting to fall that they call everyone Nazis. Their logic is that you don't allow Nazis to speak, and then everyone's a Nazi, ergo we don't allow anybody to speak.
Because the slippery slope is a fallacy.
Well, yeah, that's.
I'm being facetious. Me and Senior Filth have gone into pedantic detail about how the slippery slope isn't a fallacy, because the slippery slope is literally just politics.
Yeah,
literally,
So. Yeah, no, I agree. I also feel nervous about that one because I'm hearing aspects from the right that make me very, very nervous, that I think that they're being ahistorical and but that's the LGBTQ thing. Yeah. But
we can get into that too. So, I'm curious about that. Yeah. I guess generally speaking, like, what do you have any how would I say, like, where do you see the right now as far as like any issues that you see with the right?
I think that right now the right is 1990s Democrats, and I think 1990s Democrats were pretty good in the sense that the way that they became successful was by moderating. And I know that there is a tendency on the right to misunderstand Hegel, and they don't like the idea of the dialectic, and they think that it's like a prescription rather than a description of history. But I think that that's generally how it works. It's like a thesis and an antithesis. And then
you just called me out.
It's just, I hear it a lot. It's just objectively not true. What people say about him. You might not like him, but there were left and right Hegelians is kind of proof. But anyway, I'm not saying it functionally exactly works that way, but I find it a useful, I don't like model, a useful framework for examining history. And I think that there's kind of a moment of synthesis of right or left, and it was mostly economic with the Democrats, but in 90s. And we've now seen that in a different way with Republicans. So right now, pretty good. They're tolerant. It's a big tent. But I also am very aware that there's a segment of the right that you could call, there's a segment of the cultural conservative right that would definitely doesn't want me as part of that. Right. There's definitely those that are right now having tactical alliances with more libertarian leaning, or like Dave Rubin's or me or whatever, gay guys, particularly, who would like to roll back basic rights because they see they see a slippery slope. They think that they're right about they're wrong, but with the LGBTQ bullshit thing. But that does concern me a bit. I'm willing to accept that this is a temporary thing, but I go with whoever is going to maximize my freedom and not. There's a baseline for equality that I think the last bit of baseline was one about 2012, and anything I don't want to see anything rolled back by way of that. I'm talking about like gay marriage, unless you want to eliminate all government. Marriage, whatever.
But how about just abolish marriage? Marriage is a scam.
No, religious marriage I think is great, but yeah, I think right now it's good. I can see it swinging a little the other way. But I don't know. 10 years, 15 years. It's hard to say. Right now, I'm fine calling myself a Republican. I like the idea of a if you're going to have human organizations where people can have some amount of unity and really actually not agree on a lot of stuff. I think that's kind of healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I just lost my train of thought. I guess we can kind of go a little bit into something I've been kind of curious to speak to someone who's gay about this kind of stuff. It's just I guess what's labeled like the gay agenda and stuff. I guess we'll sort of bring up the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light thing. We're not going to get into detail, but just like, how does something like this become a thing? How does like this kind of stuff become mainstream?
You want me to go?
Whoever
I
wants
feel like
to.
I'm dumb.
I guess let's let Nate go first.
I would definitely like to. There's some things. I actually took a few notes on that just because, I look at things very symbolically too, and I also pay attention to product placement. And so, for instance, if you look at, when you think of Alex Jones, what's one of the funny things that he has said that people make fun of him for?
Gay frogs.
Yeah, right. And then obviously everybody said that's a conspiracy, and then it comes out to be true, and and then you start to see like there really is this big agenda being pushed, overtly, covertly, whatever now, where people are being made to be a certain way, or feel a certain way, or want to do something, mutilate their body, or think believe a certain way. Anyway, the point is with the frogs is very interesting because I think it was back in the 90s when there was the Budweiser commercial, right? And it's very interesting because Budweiser is associated with Bud Light. It's Anheuser-Busch, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of words being used in the subconscious mind. But anyway, then with this then there's this meme that's made of conservatives, of the frog, right? The conservative frog, the comic looking frog. Well, I don't know if it's comic.
Pepe, you talking about Pepe the frog?
Pepe crosses all political lines. He's a good boy. He's a friend.
Right. But it's funny because this Pepe was becoming big when Alex Jones was when that meme was becoming big. So then what that's saying in the subconscious mind is the conservatives are, it's telling you like the conservative frogs are becoming gay, right?
What?
So yeah, that's what it's subconsciously saying. You have to understand how that is symbolically talking to the subconscious, and this is just the way I'm seeing it. But I'm not the only one who has seen this. Now, because you have to understand these, these memes and the way things get popular is a lot of it is by design, and most people have no idea, and they want to assume that everything is just some kind of coincidence. And I'm not saying there aren't coincidences, but you have to understand that they're playing this stuff very close to the chest, and they're always playing with these names. And it's a whole nother topic of a certain kind of hidden language that's actually called green language. It's a word play, but that's for another conversation. But anyway, one of the things I picked up on was this, Dylan Mulvaney. Vaney is like that's a sexual name that you're hearing, but also Dylan's face as a male looking female is on the covering the light of bud light, right? And bud is supposed to be like a seed, something to grow, right? To flower, to bloom. So it's blooming the light. That's what it's telling you subconsciously, is it's blooming because when you think of light, you think of sun, you think of something nourishing. So Bud Light is already like using what's called subversive symbolism by stating light, because we're always in search for light through, like when we get up in the morning, that's what we're hoping that we receive is light, because if we don't get light, we don't get nourishment, we don't get growth, and so on. So anyway, they put his head right covering the light, covering the word light. So it's symbolically telling you this is the light. This is the light right now. This is the spotlight. And it is. How can you not see that? It is absolutely the spotlight. Everybody's talking about it, right? And so, it's really pushing that the agenda of this, this trans agenda into the minds of the people. And it's also really to piss off the conservatives, right? And it has. And then you have this, puppet on the strings, Kid Rock, who's, shooting this, Bud Light with this with a military grade weapon. That is definitely not a semi-automatic. That's a fully automatic that he was shooting with. So that's an illegal gun in our country. So it's like, okay, well, this guy obviously has, some kind of powers now, where he can magically show everybody that he has a military style gun, and he's not even part of the military, but he supports it, of course. But anyway, it's this, when you start to really see how this all is connecting, you start to, see the patterns, because it's all about pattern recognition. And, this is something that I practice all the time. It's not about, people were like, oh, you're looking too deep into it. Oh, you have no idea. You look all through history. Propaganda is old. It's an old story, and they will do anything to, move the field goal post in the mind of the masses. They will do anything to, place certain imagery into your head with certain ideas, so it will develop into something even more, to manifest it, even, because they're putting it into your mind. And it is there's a lot more to it. There's so much more to it. But anyway, I wanted to make those connections, because there is a lot in, with the agenda of gay and transgender, the agenda, and it's just like, people who want to do what they want with their body, or want to do what their self sexually. It's like it's being exploited in such a bizarre way, and you know, it. I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about all that.
Look, I think it's a little bit more simple than that. I don't think I've said like these exact words on your show before, but Gen Z has a really raw deal because what we've essentially been given was every single choice that could be made for us were made on our behalf from 2016 to 2021. And I don't mean that on like an individual scale with like parents and their children. I mean, on a societal level, what Gen Z was given was here's the political party you're allowed to hate. Here's the people of a certain skin color that you're allowed to discriminate against. Here's the form of liberation and youthful anger that you're allowed to exert. Here are the products you are allowed to boycott. Here are the rights you are allowed and not allowed to exercise. And honestly, I just kind of got tired of it one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm especially tired of it when it comes to this whole like trans thing, because Gen Z has more trans kids than every other generation in history, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our society becoming more accepting of trans people. And first off, you shouldn't be accepting of anyone who mutilates their genitals and chemically castrates themselves, even if they're a consenting adult and they want to. Like the minute your brain goes to the best thing for me is to take a hacksaw and chop my balls off and pour bleach on it, right? No, that's not okay. But what happens is there's thousands of people, maybe even tens of thousands of children in the United States that have taken drugs that are like on antidepressants, that are on chemically castration pills that we give to pedophiles to make in order to remove
Lupron,
their
I think.
Yeah, Lupron, yeah. And so these are like really like hardcore pills that we've given to people. Some of these pills, and like we even in the 80s and the 90s, when everyone's mother was on Valium and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The point I'm trying to make is power consolidates, and power consolidates by getting you to do things that are against your own interests and look, I do social media marketing, like organic reach. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's human psychology is something that is very, very, very malleable, and it's very scary. You can convince the masses that something that obviously isn't true is true. Case in point, like there was a brief period of time everyone knew you shouldn't drink when you have a baby, but in the mid 90s, because everyone was concerned about women's liberation, the science came up with you can have 1 or 2 glasses of wine while you're pregnant, right? And then a bunch of babies came out retarded, because again, power consolidated so that the masses did things that were against their own interests.
Yeah,
right.
That's why my advice this entire time into Gen Z is to abandon all ideology, have a high income business that you own, and just leave. Leave everything.
I like the first 2 parts of that. I'm actually a big, I have a lot of optimism for your generation. I'm not a fan. I'm speaking as broad cohorts, but
I get it.
But Gen Z, it's a bit of a segue. I'm impressed by, there's more of a tendency to be skeptical, which it seemed to have skipped a generation, skeptical of power, skeptical of what you're told, which I think is great. And you guys are funny. It's like, thank God he's a funny fucking generation. And it's the most absurd humor often too. Anyway, I'm hearing this from a lot of Gen Xers. It's like, they're kind of like us. I'm like, they might end up being better, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, that's
Gen Z supremacy. Ave Gen Z.
Well, if I can address kind of like that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I see some of that, some of both of those things. I don't. I think that it's at once fairly simple and also complicated, but maybe not in the same way that you guys are looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm talking about power consolidates, sure, but it also then disintegrates. Like one of the great litmus tests for reading history for me is study World War I. Read Guns of August, and you'll realize how whenever you want to look for a grand conspiracy, even though there are conspiracies, I think that there's more conspiracies of opportunities. The more a person is confident in exactly what will happen in the future, the less likely that's going to be the case. The most carefully planned attempts to centralize power reach a point, but the powerful themselves will always be the ones that kind of undermine that. So that's why I'm a little, I get it. And I agree to a point, but I'm always suspicious. My suspicion of like this idea of, and I do believe there's conspiracies, by the way, but when people talk about the gay agenda thing, for example, I heard that back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on the face of it so ridiculously absurd for a couple reasons. One, and this is my big shtick, the LGBTQ thing is a very recent invention, and we can peg when it was invented. It was invented almost the trans thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was invented almost immediately after we got the one thing that we were asking for, which was let us do our thing. Don't fricking send us to jail. Let us get married. It was won in 2012. What happened immediately after? All of these orgs, this is why it's kind of simple. All of these orgs needed new money.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there was this ideology coming out of the schools that was not, it's so absurdly hodgepodgey that it couldn't be a conspiracy. It mixes Marxism, it mixes postmodernism, all of these theories, which is a bunch of basically academic people having a circle jerk. They all end up graduating with these, we'll call it the broad scope of critical theories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Graduating at that moment. So I think this is an accident of history. It's a perfect, unholy, horrible storm is one. All of these people schooled in various critical theories, that the theories in school, they're competing just for academic grants and on papers to make up new oppressions. It doesn't have any real world implications, really, but they just graduate. The gay rights are one. All these orgs need new money at that time, so they need a new issue. While these people are graduating, coming into power.
Mm-hmm.
And three, and this is a big one, social media and the phone, which carries it everywhere, happen at that exact same moment. It's
mm-hmm.
all right at that moment, because if it wouldn't have been for all of these things happening together, the trans thing, that would have been relegated to a handful of teenagers on Tumblr, which is what it was until they needed to have a new thing in 2012. They needed to have this new thing, and then you can add to that 2020, which some people might say, well, that was planned too. But in 2020, you have this opening for the most absurd things to get a lot of traction. But so I'm skeptical about it. But another reason I'm really I'm triggered by the idea of what they do. I'm not like criticizing you guys. And a lot of gay people now just go along with this LGBTQ thing. The Q and the T are the most homophobic, and I mean it, the most violence that's been perpetuated against gay men, and including kids and lesbians, than anything ever in all of human history that I know of.
Do you have any
in terms of the scale? Well,
not to mention the genocide of tomboys.
Yes, so back in the 90s, I was at a gay youth group. This is back when it was just the G and the L, and we were just thinking about adding the B's to the mix. You remember? You ever heard of Fred Phelps? He was a Baptist minister who marched
Sounds
around
familiar,
God hates fags.
Mm-hmm.
He came and protested here in Portland, outside of my gay youth group, and we were back then just saying there was a reality that gay kids, particularly because there was no social out, there was no validation that you even existed. It started to happen in big cities. We're actually, way more prone to kill themselves. I know that those kind of statistics now are used all over the place for propaganda purposes, but it was all about we're here through history, we exist, and actually us. That was in other words, what we were arguing was effectively God made us this way. Mm-hmm. We are essentially this thing. If we tried to be straight, we would be straight. We wouldn't go through all this. Flash forward, what does the Q and the trans movement say? You are not essentially this way. God didn't make you this way. You need to cut. You need to. You're in the wrong body. I'm like, where did I hear that before? I'm wrong in my body. I'm wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong about me. Where did I hear that before? And back then, I used to be really critical of I say that the God's hates fags guy was the extreme. That was the extreme. Mm-hmm. The majority of right-wing Christians, I didn't like what they were doing, but the most that they would do would be, let's pray away the gay. Let's pray for the sinner, love the sinner, hate the sinner. I'm nostalgic for that. I'm like, if you're Christian and you think that, I'm a sinner, great. You're not saying that if I were a kid or whatever, that I should have my genitals lopped off. So this is the thing that is it's maddening to me that it's the left, including the so-called community that I'm supposed to belong to, when was the last time you heard any gay guys? When do they put a gay guy up front? Mm-hmm. They put, the closest thing they'll do is a drag queen.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting one. But we've been pushed aside, and even increasingly lesbians, because they're, often feminists, are pushed aside. It has nothing to do with anyone. It's just this weird, I think it is a social contagion, but it's really damaging, and not just obviously to gay kids, but gay kids are kind of at the forefront, because for boys at least. Mm-hmm. Girls, I think that all of the girls are seriously in threat by this. Statistically, they seem to be the ones that are doing the late stage, this gender dysphoria bullshit. Whereas
I mean, honestly, I think that those old school women, I agree with Ricky Gervais. They're very old fashioned, and these new women with penises are just, they're just clearly, they're just superior in every way. They could throw things further, they can jump higher, But I really do think that, especially when it comes to gay men, they're lazy. What they've done was they've taken they don't do what the rest of us do, which is deal with women's shit. They just found an excuse to just an excuse to have less headaches, more money in their bank account, less trips, going to brunch less. That's what they've done. And honestly, I'm straight.
Lazy or smart? Smart.
Well, okay. There's a very thin line between the two, but I am genuinely envious of gay men and their Sigma grind set. I keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard this is happening now to straight men, but it's the bizarroness with trans people. At first, saying if you're a gay guy that won't have sex with a trans man, you're transphobic. You're telling me I have to have sex with a woman again? Where have I heard this? And I'm hearing that they're doing that with straight guys too. That
it's literally have sex with me, you bigot. It's the rapiest thing ever.
If it wasn't for all of the horrible, if we could remove the mutilation part of kids, right? Mm-hmm. This would be almost funny. It's like a weird it's like a Mad TV skit from the 90s.
Right, yeah.
90s. But it's ridiculous. But it's, unfortunately, there's a lot of people being harmed And I'm actually trying to, I'm venting here, but I've been trying to white pill because this upsets me so much, so often. When I'm walking down the street and I see like the ACLU people there, I'm just like trying to, pray or meditate on my walk. And I'm like being all, oh, I'm loving. And then I just, this upset happens like you're seeing now. It's bad.
Portland is such a weird place. You're minding your own business. You're out for a walk, and then the anti-civil liberties union shows up and just ruins your day by doing something absurd. Dude, I'd leave Portland.
Really. That's my plan. I was telling a friend the other day, I've been seeing on my walk these Jehovah's Witnesses standing on the corner, these smiley Jehovah's Witnesses. And I said, something's fucked up in Portland if my heart warms when I see the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm like, oh, they're nice and smiley Jehovah's Witnesses. That's nice. I'm like, what the fuck bizarro world am I in? Yeah. Portland's not great anymore.
Do you think that maybe like the queer trans kind of push has something to do with maybe like a lack of faith or anything like that on the left?
It's a form of faith. It is a form of faith.
I do see it as a kind of religion, but
it is. It's a cult. It's a cult. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you've heard that term. It's totally a cult. I was likening it a while back, and I feel now bad because I liken it to Puritans actually in a lot of ways. Now I'm like, the Puritans are fine comparatively, but here's the thing. Now I'm going to sound like one of those older school progressive religious people, but I think that this is true. I was telling my friend, I said, when conservatives, I'm saying this broadly, religious conservatives are talking about the godlessness of particularly the LGBTQ, but I'm just going to say gay people, because they've been saying that forever. It's like, look at them going into their bathhouses and fucking every which way and all of this. But I'm including myself here, even though I have a strong religious foundation now, but the LGB, let's say LG, and I don't know where the other ones fit, are the irreligious because of an exclusion that goes way back. There was real alienation from God. That was so. What's supposed to happen? Of course, by nature you're going to create like a false religion, and particularly if you start it back before this got all crazy. It's not that bad of a religion to just do old school social justice. It wasn't like this. It was like, I want to help people. And I believe in freedom too back then. And let's have a better system. We didn't talk about equity, a more just society, all of that. Yeah. It's all kumbaya. It's hippie-like. Okay, you can clutch your crystals and do all that stuff. Now it's a bit different, and you kind of what's the term? You sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. Conservative Christians bear some responsibility for what's happening now. I'm not proposing any mea culpa on their part, but it's just, I am really pleased, and I don't even identify as a Christian. I'm somewhere between Hindu and Christian. I don't know. God plays hide and seek with me, but I am really I like a society that's about 70-something% Christian. I think it's pretty damn good. And I'm seeing these gay kids that are just, I love Jesus, Catholic ones, evangelical ones. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. So in a weird way, not to go on too religious a bit here, but if you think of any kind of God or spirit or goodness, whatever you want to call it in history, there is another thesis, antithesis, synthesis happening that's positive at the same time. Something good is happening in the midst of all this ookiness. And so that's my long answer. I actually I hope that there's going to be more as the whole gay sexual stuff, when we eliminate the nonsense made up stuff, when we get back to just there's gonna be a small, I'll disagree with you slightly, Trevor. There's always been a very, very small percentage of legitimate transsexuals, and it's identifiable from a very early age. And I don't know what to say about like, I'm not going to call that like a harmful mutilation necessarily. I just don't know. But when we at least account for just the real stuff, if religion can be, however it works it out, more accommodating, and on all of us, I'll say, start realizing the bankruptcy of this kind of idolatry, this false woke religion, I think a lot of good things can happen and are actually starting to happen. It's another thing I'm liking about Gen Z, because I am seeing a lot of that. It's very, it's moving actually.
Because Gen Z conservatives, and I'll say this as a Burkean, and here's my nerd showing, as a Burkean conservative. If you know Edmund Burke, he's kind of my favorite political theorist, even though I've only read one of his books. But it's just it's kind of like, it's because what Gen Z is doing, even if it's like all digital, which we'll probably have to solve later and probably move some of this stuff to the physical world a bit more. And I'm someone who's building infrastructure like for political dissidents, kind of on the side, like I'm guilty of this too. Everything that I do is all digital, but like I really do. I do agree with you. Like there's a lot of things to be excited about. I know that Jay isn't here, but Jay's a big fan of like things like the Federal like Reserve and stuff like that. And there's a lot of things to look forward to, like the Federal Reserve going either in like the weird CBDC thing that no one will adopt, or it just completely goes away in like 30, 40 years, and everyone adopts like the more cryptocurrency ecosystem, or people basically, like, honestly, like the best thing about Gen Z is we're the first generation to go without the cable box. I think that was the tipping point. The minute BlackRock and Vanguard didn't have complete control over the dissemination of information, then everything it kind of solved itself almost. You know, it's taking a long time, because because we're not like actively trying to do it on purpose. We're just doing what's best for us kind of desperately. That's actually why I'm trying to get more into like networking now, especially, is because I'm just kind of like, okay, we need to some kind of culmination of effort here, and we need to like move some genuine capital and build some genuine systems here, instead of like the Daily Wire producing conservative virtue porn. You know,
I like the Daily Wire. I like Jamie Boring quite a bit. I think his philosophy strategically is entirely sound. Of you have to create
culture,
an alternative economy, alternative economy. I think is just. I think it's, in that sense, it's very simple. But I get what you're saying. I would also point out that maybe with that black box thing, like you're forgetting that, or maybe that that the internet was amazingly free in the late 90s and early aughts. It started when the whole national security state after 2001. It took them a little while, but it was the Wild West, and it was awesome. So we actually, that's the other thing, is when I started seeing the censorship stuff, it's like, why do we need to have a fact checker? That's the other thing. So my entire generation, and every generation, was like, one of the first, in 7th grade, it's like, you look at the opposing argument, and then you do research, and then you write your essay response. It's like
oh my God, you were taught basic arithmetic in grade school. Oh my God, I'm so envious. I had to learn basic arithmetic on my own.
I still haven't. I haven't learned basic arithmetic yet. I'm really. But essays, I can write an essay. So.
No, I mean, like, you had to like learn like basic problem. Like, you were taught basic problem solving in school. Like, I'm just like, wow, you know, like that's why like like honestly, like I'll say this as a Protestant, as a Christian. It's why I'm really thankful for Andrew Tate, even though as a Christian I'm not supposed to like Andrew Tate for some reason. But like basically he told Gen Z of the world, fuck off, get rich, and dip. You know, which like look, here's the thing. The best way to topple any system is if young men lift maxes and stopped paying their taxes.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. Like that's a, you know.
Isn't he becoming a Muslim now?
I really don't give a shit about Andrew Tate's religion. I think that's very.
I don't know much about it. My
him,
friend tells me about. I mean, I get you're saying. I think that the dropout part, I'm kind of not a big fan of. Because I particularly because that was tried. It was like with acid drop out. But I also think. I mean, I get it though. I think it would be a waste in a certain way of that potential I'm seeing in your generation. Those same men, like. Maybe I'm also misreading what you mean by dropout, but like to.
No, I mean, the best way to not pay taxes is to renounce. They don't say this. I say this.
Yeah.
The best way, or like the quickest path to not paying taxes, is to renounce your U.S. Citizenship, so that you're not, so that if you move somewhere else, you don't pay the United States global citizen tax. Basically, so that basically means you have a residency or whatever in another place. You don't even live in the United States. You can not live in the United States for 20 years, but they will literally just take money out of your bank account.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I get it. That makes me a little sad though. It's like it's surrendering Rome to the barbarians.
Nah, dude,
but I get it.
The Romans were never a place. They were a people, just like Americans. If I go somewhere else, I can take my attitude as an American wherever the hell I can take my I could take my God-given right to a firearm wherever I go. And if I'm rich enough, then I can.
I don't know.
If
I don't
I'm
think
rich
that
enough,
you can do that in almost anywhere other than here.
No, but the goal is like I'm being a bit facetious, but I really do kind of agree with Gen Z's general attitude, which is just scale yourself to I'm doing it a bit more the way I'm doing it is a lot more interpersonal and providing value for people instead of arbitraging value the way a lot of these SMMA kids are doing it. I'm not going to give them shit. They do good work. But it's basically like I really do think that like if like one day randomly 2 million Gen Z males threaten to renounce their U.S. Citizenship after they've spent 6 years building up their body and their finances and stuff like that, and just randomly threatened, hey, if you continue to do this, I'm going to renounce my U.S. citizenship. Right? That's 2 million rich people not paying taxes. The U.S. government will have no choice but to do whatever you want at that point.
I like
your
the
ultimate form of leverage is just to be so powerful. Be so powerful that you don't have to do it, because with the internet and global commerce and stuff like that, and I'll even say this right now, I've been going ham on virtual online networking events. You can go to meetup.com, select online and select business, and network with hundreds, thousands of people in various rooms and stuff like that, and just share what you do and meet quality people as well.
Nice.
And I'm just saying stop protesting, stop voting, stop paying your taxes.
Stop. Taxes, I think you can. The rich have already figured that out. They've been the good ones.
You're talking about anarchy. That's all anarchy is.
Yeah, I'm talking about
You crazy anarchist kids.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, the only reason this propaganda works, whenever I hear something like when the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light thing came out, my first thought was, I literally don't have, like, I'm fully booked today. I do not have time to engage in this psyop. Why is this so important? That was my thing. I didn't have to engage in this the stupid bullshit. I didn't have to pick a side. I didn't have to do anything because I already know what side I'm on. I already know what side the weird blue-haired fishnet
so much people use the blue hair thing. It's true. There's so many people with blue hair here. It's like boring.
It's a dog
in my
whistle.
day, you had to earn fucking blue hair. Only
I remember. Yeah, I remember when
I had a blue mohawk.
Yeah, I remember when you saw someone with like green or blue hair back in the day, it meant that they were kind of interesting and cool. Now it just means like they're probably a dick or a bitch.
Opposite.
Yeah.
It's like they're boring and uncreative. Yeah. Sorry. Not always. There's exceptions to every rule, blah, blah, blah.
Imagine contaminating the dead cells on top of your head for a temporary period.
Well, I did that. I look good with my blue mohawk, though. But those are different times. Can I throw out my pet theory that I have absolutely no basis on about the drag queen issue as a whole?
I've been doing basically the whole thing for like 30 minutes now.
So if you look back when the trans thing was starting to really get a lot of traction, there was initially and understandably some tension between drag queens, like at the gay pride. They eliminated gay, the pride parades, drag queens, and the trans movement. These are naturally not compatible, right? So my pet theory is that it's not it wasn't deliberate. It was almost by way of chance. Drag queens were never political. Drag queens were adult entertainment, right? But you can't be just a drag queen. They found a way to give themselves protection. It's like everything else on the woke left. You have to like signal, right? You have to prove your virtue and your worthiness as an actual marginalized group or whatever. So they were able to move from just being like the increasingly trans-dominated LGBTQ thing is like starting to criticize them and maybe want to move them out of the sphere of cool or whatever to look, we're political now. We're reading stories to kids and we're just political, which is way beyond the pale. But like now all of a sudden they're political, and it's only because of that. It's like one of them did it by like got some political traction, and then at some survival instinct, drag queen survival instinct level, combined with the fucking media, which elevates all of it and names of all of it. It's become actually a cultural meme almost, or again, a contagion. It's like a drag queen contagion. It's like, I have to be political now. Oh, I am. And think about this. What do you get? What do drag queens want? They want applause, attention, and validation. It's like, of course, they just got it on a huge scale. So it's and it's so stupid though, because they're just fucking drag queens. It's not even make drag queens great again.
It's interesting. All the patterns, like right now it's the Mulvaney thing. It's just like everything is just everywhere you look, in movies and cartoons and different TV shows. Everything is just all of a sudden exploding with the drag thing, and then or the trans thing, and the Jack Daniels and Anheuser, and but then you look back last year. I don't know if you remember, but and I want to make this very clear, during Father's Day month, they put the and when you think of Father's Day, it's very interesting because well, I won't go too far into that. But anyway, the point is it came out, there was this explosion of all these different pockets all over the country, if you remember, of all these drag shows with children, right? And dildos and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because you look at these pockets. I mean, even during the go back to the lockdowns that summer, when all of a sudden there were these pockets of all these protest for Black Lives Matter, right? And they were everywhere. Remember, all the cities had boarded up their windows because of all the the rioting going on, and there were pockets. And so then, and not only that, but within those pockets, there were bricks that were just placed there, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's crazy to think about, like, if you see these pockets of and the patterns, you start to see, like, there really is a placement of all these things. And it's because people aren't just like magically coming up with, like, getting all this stuff together at the same time. It's I mean, I do know information spreads quickly to everybody, sure, and that's what they want us to think. But the point is to see these patterns to where they want to take the mind, what they want to put our mind on. It's always been that way, you know. And the more that we wake up to that, the more we'll start to see, like, where our mind is really being geared towards. But at the end of the day, I wanted to say this earlier, is I think it's always important, when I'm talking about trans or gay or straight or whatever, I the only thing I care about is the behavior of people. Is what they are doing causing harm to other people?
Yeah.
Well, then they're a bad person. And I don't care what they claim that they are. I think that's the thing that people are not focusing on enough, which is objective morality. And because that's where we all meet on the level. That's where we all at the end of the day, it's like that's how we want to treat, or it's how we treat each other. It really does come down to the golden rule. And if we're following these patterns that are going on and seeing how people are being harmed, no matter what religious sect they are, whatever sex they are, whatever political position they're in, it's like it really all comes down to that that moral compass and how we behave towards each other, individually and collectively.
One of the interesting things early on to me, when I started seeing that, well, there's a few interesting things regarding those riots in Portland. While touching on the idea, like you're talking about the bricks, like this doesn't look like it's a chance. I think there was a lot of conspiracy of opportunity, like not long-term planning. But I'll tell you this, and I told a friend at the time, I could be wrong. Portland's a pretty white town. Somebody was bussing in, not Antifa, and more black people. They were moving in, like, which obviously I don't care, but there was something weird happening. And then they're gone. It's like they're just suddenly gone. I thought that was interesting. Here's another thing that I thought was interesting, is that I was looking at the tactics, and having been a leftist of it more at the anarchist variety, one of the groups that you hate are Trotskyists. It's like, it's an old school, like the Trotskyists are schemers, and they historically were extra scheming. I'm like, this looks really Trotsky. This somebody's paying for these Antifa guys to come here and everything. And it was after that it came out. I'm like, this BLM is not what I think that maybe they're not necessarily Trotskyists, but they're being funded by communists. They have to be.
They're
like
the BLM movement specifically is if you take I've gone into critical race theory on your show a billion times over, Mr. Filth, but basically critical race theory informs if you go back to their the deleted of what we believe page on the BLM
I remember
website,
that. Yeah,
critical race theory is sort of the ideological basis for the BLM movement. And you're right to compare them to Trotskyites, a post-Marx socialist ideology,
and one that believed in. Sorry.
Go ahead.
And the Trotsky specifically, I can't remember what their strategy was, but it was one that they tried in the UK with the Labour Party of like infiltrate. They were more sneaky. They had sneaky strategies to them. And then afterwards, I found out that the BLM lady's dad, she's a total communist, and that she goes off to communist China. I'm like, well, I was right about that. My anarchist nose smelt communists. That's what I was saying.
But you really can just kind of like blame everything that's going wrong with the Western world. You can blame it directly on the rise of the Soviet Union. I don't mean like the Soviets are like basically responsible, and it's like it's basically like some kind of like continuation of some kind of grand scheme from like Lenin and Stalin. I mean, the moment the Soviet Union became a thing, the socialist world, and you might be very familiar with this. You sound like you are. Yeah, it split into two camps. It's split into, okay, we're wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is double down on everything, because it's not that this ideology that clearly doesn't work is clearly wrong. It's that we didn't commit to it hard enough. The second camp, and the one that had a bit more work to do, and the one that inevitably won, was the group of, oh, hey, so the proletariat, so Marx is wrong. The proletariat isn't a revolutionary force, it's a reactionary force. And so we need to force the proletariat to work in their own interests and become a revolutionary force. That's where you have like your fascism and your Trotskyism, your Marxist-Leninism, and your National Socialism. It's all the same. It's all the same bullshit, basically. Of, hey, we're going to, through some kind of scheme, force regular people into our dialectic. To quote a more favorite word from you, Nate. So basically, what happened was they just like the National Socialists and the fascists were like I have a particular hatred of them over like the Stalinites and the Maoists, where basically they just kind of went, okay, so we'll just adopt right-wing aesthetics like flags and community, and put it all within the lens of the state. And then the National Socialists went like, okay, but the state is actually the community, and the community is the race.
Yeah,
it became insane. That failed, and then the people that were left, that were still trying to figure their own shit out, didn't work. They went to America, established the Frankfurt School, and then the what was the first critical Bell. There we go, Derek Bell. And then Derek Bell was basically like, there's something wrong with these critical theorists. They're too white. Let me explain why that's bad. And that's the source of our problem. The Soviet Union existed, and if that never happened, none of this would have happened.
This is like a thrilling subject for me, and there's so many areas there where I agree, and then others I kind of don't. But
there are some books I haven't read yet that I'm gonna read later that probably fill in the gaps.
Well, or I could just be totally off my rocker. I have weird views. I fell in love with history by you might see icons of the Russian royal family back there. I fell in love, like back there. I fell in love with history, studying Russian history, Tsarist particularly, but and then later obviously became a very, very uncomfortable thing when I'm like a leftist, and even though I'm an anarchist, I still had some sympathies for the Soviet Union. So I have like a bust of Lenin and icons of the Russian royal family. I'm like, keep them apart. They're not okay to go together. But for years as a leftist, I won't even say it's because I was a leftist. For years, my argument was, and I still kind of believe it, it just depends on where you draw the beginning. You point to the start of this at the beginning of the Soviet Union, depending on where you want to start your history. I think this collapse of the Soviet Union was, in modern history, a catastrophe. And I'm not saying I like the Soviet Union at all. It's the thing that opened the door to America. Like, we might not have liked them, but they kept us in check. Our extreme globalists in check. And immediately after we became the first world power, that's when you have the national surveillance state just goes all fucking crazy. So I've often thought that that's still kind of true. It's like, if they could have just evolved, they were on their way to evolving. It was the greatest frick. And plus, who knows what's going to happen now? The Putin, who I think's kind of mostly right about a lot of stuff, but I know that's bad. It's forbidden, but I'm just like the broad sweep of the history. That's my take. But that could end up being very dangerous. And that, again, is them responding to this huge, huge wealth grab by what I would now call our crony capitalists, the West's crony capitalists. Back then, I would just call it capitalists. Now, and I can see where you're saying that it started there, but I think that the problem with, and I don't disagree, but when do you call it a start? You could also say it's the start of Lenin or the Stalin, like a lot of now communists will say, no, it's Stalin turned Lenin wrong, or Marx. It started with Marx. So it's kind of hard to say. And the Soviet Union,
I'm saying it's specifically the start of post-Marx theory, because if you read like Steve Sternhill, and like he goes into the history of it way better than I ever could. This, like, the origins of national syndicalism and fascism, where all these things sprout from, like even like Giovanni Gentile, he started off as a national. He went from communist to national syndicalist to fascist. Adolf Hitler went from communist to national syndicalist.
Did you say Adolf Hitler went from communist?
Adolf Hitler started as
he was never a communist.
He was okay, but he was a national syndicalist. He went from communist to national syndicalist, and then to his own manifesto said he was a communist for a brief period. Yeah, I'll go by his own written words. You know.
Yeah, I don't know, but
whether he was in practice doesn't really mean anything. I think, but he started off there, and then and then went to that. Lenin went from communist, national syndicalist, and then his own brand of Marxist Leninism, and then it's all national syndicalism, which came about because of this of the post-Marx consensus, essentially.
Well, I think
that's wwhy I started there, because it's just
I think sense. That the only I guess where I pull back is just, I'm always suspicious of that. This is the thing that started it when it comes to, like, there was such complex competing factors, including overlapping ideologies and chances of history, ego driven shit, that it's easy to find if you with any kind of like a long-term historical cause and effect. This is, I think, a problem with a lot of conspiracy theorists. The further back they go, the less reliable it is, because they have a tunnel vision that sees exactly what they want to see. I'm not saying that you're doing this. This is just my train of thought. Like this guy back in the day, I remember when I was like a black-clad anarchist, but I wasn't. It was called Black Bloc. I was actually against Black Bloc, but I kind of looked it. And this guy had he had a conspiracy theory radio show in Portland. He was so conspiratorial that he thought that Art Bell, I don't know if you remember Art Bell, that he was a government, he was the top, like the conspiracy alien AM radio guy. He was a god. He was a misinformation agent. And I'm working at a hardware store, and this guy, he says, "Oh, those Black Bloc anarchists in Seattle," and he does this chain of like, they're being, this guy's associated with this guy, which is associated with this side, blah, blah, Rockefellers. I'm like, what? You're saying the Rockefellers are paying for the anarchists? The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because I knew like a lot of these people. Anyway, so I'm always suspicious. It doesn't mean I don't think that there's truth there. But to me, one of the pivotal points, at least in the United States, one of the shifts that has so much to do with like you talked about critical race theory, the critical theories generally that did come out of the Frankfurt School. Like a lot of conservatives talk about like this as they often use that dialectic thing. But they talk about like this is a long-term game and it's a cohesive plan, as though and it followed all the steps. It's like, well, if it followed the steps, they could have done it in the 60s. And then half of them wouldn't have ended up being yuppies in the 80s, like all of these leftists. But in the 1960s, this is kind of a segue back to the Black Lives Matter and the riots here. One of the things that made me critical of them from the very beginning was actually my study of the radical movement of the 60s, including the Black Panther Party of self-defense. And I met Bobby Seale. I'm like this white kid with this black beret. I'm like, I want to be a Black Panther. And the Black Panther Party back then would have hated BLM because what they, this is an old leftist. It was like class first. Class is the thing, and then everything else is underneath it. So in a way, again, a bit of my red pill, I guess the seeds were planted with old school leftism, because I'm like, wait, why are you guys focusing on race so much? I thought we fixed that mostly. You guys are backtracking there. But the critical race thing is the whole critical theory thing, as like the obviously those elaborate theories were placed. They go way back, like Frankfurt School and everything, but in a weird, fucked up way. I think that if you look at the 90s and the early 2000s, when it's just an academia, it's almost just an accident. It's literally when the schools just start getting dominated by academics that are influenced by that are circle jerking to each other. No one's paying attention to any critical thing. The critical race theory had been there, like you said. I think he wrote that. I can't remember the guy's name. You mentioned him in 1980. I think the critical race theory.
Derek Bell. He wrote his he wrote his first couple essays that are in the critical race theory canon. He wrote the one that comes to mind is Brown versus Board of Education, where he argues in pedantic detail that the only reason that the U.S. government, and they should in fact be stopped from doing this, is trying to abolish segregation in the classroom, is because they're trying to stop communism, not because liberals care about ending racism. Trust me, bro. I have the documents. Also, it's a CIA thing. Trust me, bro. I have the documents. He doesn't have the documents, but he says he does. But that was written in like right around Brown versus Board of Education. The CRT movement, they were basically, they didn't call themselves they called themselves like race crits after after they started talking with each other back and forth. Then they kind of grandfathered other people in and had like students and tutelages. They didn't call themselves critical race theorists and have like an established canon like they do now until the late 90s.
Yeah, well, I know that there was
they spent a long time laying down this groundwork.
Yeah, and I can see that. Well, it depends on how one looks at it. Just like when people look at the communists laying down the groundwork, that you could take that back to Stalin or before. I'm saying academics who try, and then history keeps moving, and then there is some deliberateness, but there's not any long-term plan. It just ends up it's like, a lot of anti-Semites want to see how many Jews there are in Hollywood, and therefore, ergo, it's a conspiracy. I'm like, well, that's like saying there's a lot of gay guys in hair salons. It's like some of these things are things that happen over time in history. So I hadn't heard about that. It went back that far, but in any case, it actually supports what I was going to say, is that you have these ideas that are there for a long, long time. They only explode very recently. They explode. So back then, in a weird, where I was going with its weird, fucked up way, all of the critical theory stuff, it became the most absurd with queer theory, really, and all the trans stuff. But that's all the same. It really, because I was in grad school, I left social sciences as an undergrad because I thought history was being stupefied. Like, I hated the idea of the social construct. I just didn't like that. And I thought, I'll write books. So I go into literature and writing. I had no frickin', as a grad student, literature and writing. The humanities had been totally taken over, and it's French theories. It's postmodern, right?
The ones that voted to, or petitioned, I should say, the government to reduce the age of consent to 12. Those guys.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm talking about
French.
Yeah, I'm talking about Derrida, like the French theorists that came over. So it's like there's the Frankfurt School. It's again, there's multiple factors. So you have these communists trying to rework out communists, but you also have postmodernists, this jack off French theories that are just. Then in the 80s to then 90s and then aughts, it's just grad schools that are now dominated by this mix that they should not ever go together. They shouldn't. There's no way postmodernism should in any way merge with anything Marxist. It doesn't make any sense. And it's literally, it's an oversimplification, but literally a bunch of grad students seeing what more and more obtuse things that they can say that include references to oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it was for over, like you could say a decade, but maybe 20 years. I really do think it's an accident of history that this explodes onto the mainstream. Mm-hmm. Mostly an accident of history.
Here's
it was absurd. Yeah. It's absurd.
Here's a Substack.
Just we should probably be ending within like 10 minutes or so. So go on.
I recommend a Substack article from Curtis Yarvin. It's called A Brief Explanation of the Cathedral by Curtis Yarvin. It's like I really do think you'd get a lot of value out of that because you're definitely of similar minds, and it's fairly short, and I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I might do that. You might have to send me a link or something. One of these.
I'll add a link. I'll add a link to the video as I post it. Yeah. I guess I don't know. You guys have any final things you wanted to kind of get into?
Sorry, we kind of took over the thing for like.
I guess real quick. I mean, you mentioned earlier about like your issues with some of the LGBT stuff was that they were, or the ideological stuff was that they were trying to, I guess, erase gay history. If you got, I guess, want to briefly kind of explain what you mean by that.
Well, okay, so this is back on 2010. I'm writing about this, and to me it was just academic, but it made me, because history is one of the things that made me realize, oh, there's Frederick the Great. I exist in history. That was like liberating to me, because it really was that, like you didn't know back then. But their essential argument is that there's no essential gayness. So it's the same thing. It's like they're framing it in terms of this. You can be anything that you self-identify as. The seeds of it were planted then, and I'm seeing it then. Like if you go that route, you're erasing this history that we had to dig up. We had to dig this up. So again, it's academic, and I'm like in 1980, John Boswell, who wrote Christianity, Social Tolerance, and Homosexuality, great book. He wrote that in one of two gay studies, like I think in the country. It might have only been one, gay studies. I think he started it. That becomes queer studies, which is an invention by queer theory, which becomes gender studies, right? So I'm like right before, like maybe when it's transitioning to gender studies, but it was queer studies. So I'm writing about that. And then very recently, there's this, because there's aspects of gay male history that like conservative right people will latch onto that's inconvenient. I believe that history is history. So here's an inconvenient one. Ernest Röhm, the head of the brown shirts, was not just a Nazi. He was a very socialist Nazi. He was a gay superiorist, right? He was all about it being a gay dude. That we don't want that. We don't. No, because somebody like what's his? I really like the dude, but the guy from India who's a conservative, big Trump supporter. I can't remember, but he talked about that years ago, like by drawing those lines, like, see, the Nazi movement started the gay movement. I'm like, it's fucking so stupid. But anyway, there's things like that. One of them is the Gemeinschaft der Eigene, and the Gemeinschaft der Eigene, a decade ago, is a huge. History that's interesting is interesting to me. And it was throughout the teens, pre-World War I, and then it's knocked out by the Nazis, basically. And what it was is this broad admixture that's a very uncomfortable now admixture of everything from anarchists to nudists to the early Scout movement, which was a youth movement, which is also a young men's movement. And then a nationalist. So this is like there was these proto-gay Nazis, like these bisexual superiorists, back to nature, Germanic cult. It was like they were crazy pre-Nazi hippies. Well, that doesn't. We don't want that, because there was some pederast. By that I mean like teenage or 20 something. We don't want to talk that even existed, right? We definitely don't want to talk that there was these proto Nazis, right? They might leave it if there's a few anarchists or whatever, some communists there too. My point is that it was a weird history that's fascinating. You go to that page now, there is one paragraph.
Wow.
So they literally, I was like saying they're going to stop teaching it in college. They're going to replace it. I'm like, no, they're actually just erasing history. And every time that they rewrite gay men and just say a queer, this LGBTQ guy from 1900, I'm like, it wasn't LGBTQ. There's no, it was nothing like that at all. He was a gay dude, or maybe even a bisexual dude. That's what I meant by the erasure of gay men history.
All right,
I appreciate your knowledge, AK.
Yeah, you're smart.
That again?
Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it's nice to nice to know someone who's read so much into this like absurd leftist theology as much as I've gone into it.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Now I actually just freaking almost exclusively read personal development stuff and religious books. That's all. I'm like, this. That was another good thing about the red pill. I told you I would ramble once I got some freaking coffee in me.
It's okay.
This is gonna sound arrogant, but I was bored. I'd learned everything. As I left, I figured it all out. There's nothing new.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like let's learn about, I don't know, Republicans and capitalism and shit. That sounds fucking great. And it's kind of fun.
That's cool. I guess we'll just end the show there.
Okay.
I guess.
Sorry to ramble too much.
No, it's cool. I like this kind of stuff, so it's fun. I guess before we go, you don't want to plug anything, or
I know that you said that Trevor said that anybody that tries to plug something on your show is a dirtbag.
No. I said I wouldn't plug it in the middle of the show.
At the end is fine.
Yeah. Making a point.
Okay. Well, I would actually like to plug my book.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead. A complete system for setting and achieving your goals. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
That's what happens when you stop being a feeling sorry for yourself leftist drunk and you just start actually doing stuff. You write a book.
All right. I want to, I guess, anywhere people can find you, social media, stuff like that.
Gold Guy AK on TikTok, because I'm one of those hip kids that are on the TikTok there. And AK Spencer on Facebook. I know no one does Facebook anymore, but yeah. The book's available at Amazon, but on TikTok I do my art and videos, and I do some goal stuff. Oh, and the Instagram. I don't know. I don't know what my name is on there.
All right. I guess Nate, you want to plug anything before you go?
Yeah. So there's 2 conferences coming up this year in 2023. One is June 24th and 25th, and it's called the Trivium. It's actually Funnel 3, so it's the 3rd conference of its kind, Freedom Under Natural Law. And it is a conference all about, history, the ancient world, freedom, symbolism, and, the list goes on and on. But essentially it's about learning how to learn and learning how to think and learning how to communicate, because that's what the Trivium is about. And then the second conference that and then I'm actually giving a presentation called Oculus, and it's all about learning how to understand symbolism with the eye, and it's a very, very, very in-depth presentation that I've worked extremely hard on. It's took me, many years to understand what I'm talking about in that presentation. So definitely want to, if you're interested, definitely get ready for that. And I'll share some more information as we do more shows. But then the other conference that's coming up in September 23rd and 24th of this year It's called Metamorphosis, and it's Seed 5, so it's the 5th conference of its kind. And I'm going to be giving a presentation called Earth Brain 2, and it is a sacred, with the subtitle Sacred Trace. So it's another symbolic presentation that helps us understand basically the polarity between, understanding polarization dialectics, really, because in its inception. And so it goes all the way back to, pre-dynastic Egypt, into understanding where these ideas all come from, socialism included. And so very, very powerful conferences that I highly recommend anybody check out. And, if you want, I'll send you some links to where people can find that. So.
Okay, cool. Trevor, you want to plug anything?
Yeah. So my name's Trevor Brown. I am the, I'll just say CEO because that sounds nice, of Acropolis Digital, where I leverage goal-based social media to get inbound leads on autopilot for your business. But in 6 to 9 months' time, I'm going to be transitioning my agency away from the sort of organic social media marketing that we specialize in, and transitioning to leveraging social media and our proven strategies in order to help political dissidents, particularly conservatives, win local elections. So because we're in this transition period, we basically, just to kind of get a proof of concept, we're having massive discounts on our basically done for you sort of social media strategy, networking, all that stuff that you need to run for office. It kind of manages a whole back end of that. But if you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me on Getter or Instagram with Koji down below in the description. And if you want us to build and scale your brand, I will literally tell you exactly how me and my team would build and scale your brand, how we would do your edits, and how we would script your videos, and all of that, all within 15 minutes. And not only would we do it quickly, we would tell you how we would do it all for free, because I like only working with doers. So that's why I give out all the information for free. I'll give you all the sauce that you need to do it for free. I'll follow you for a week to make sure that you're doing it. And once I see you're a doer, then we can worry about some kind of a pricing structure or something, because I only work with doers. So.
All right, nice. And I'm Senor Filth. You can check out my merch on my Big Cartel store. The link will be down in the description. I think within the last week or so released the 2nd episode to my movie show. You should check it out. Tales from the video store. I actually have to change. I found out that there's a similar channel with the same name, so I have to maybe rechange the name in the next episode. But anyways, check that out. On June 3rd or 4th, I can't remember, I'm going to be vending somewhere in Long Beach, so check that out. I'm going to have some new merch, some new patches, and I promise to have my music show set up by next week, hopefully. So I can finally, I've been talking about it for months, so I plan to have it done this week, but this week was a weird one, so yeah, so just be on the lookout for that. And yeah, I guess we'll just end it there. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you. Anybody want to have any last words?
Physical media is forever by Laserdisc, but you already knew that.
A right is an action that does not cause harm to other sentient beings.
All right. Thanks, Spencer, for coming on. You're always welcome to come back on. This was fun.
Oh, yeah, it was very fun.
And yeah, we'll see you guys. Peace.
Wait, Roberto.
Hold on.
Stay here. I want to talk to you.